You are aware of this marijuana solution.
We have Michael Minardi. Everybody give a warm welcome to Michael Minardi, lawyer, activist, and salsa dancer.
Still working on the salsa dancing, believe me. So thank you all for coming here tonight, and thank you for MJ Richards for having these events. I think that they're important. I will say I think both of my clients who were arrested may have been using something like this, but I can't condone it, obviously, for cultivation of cannabis at this time. This is to learn and to educate and to use for legal vegetables so that hopefully when we can regulate Florida, we can do it legally in a safe environment. And you already know how to do it and to use plants and to have a green thumb, because a lot of people don't. And there's a lot of plants out there and things that he can teach you as to this equipment and how to use it properly, so that you will be ready for that next green rush. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Amendment 2 tonight, what's going on right now, and then I'm going to talk about Regulate Florida, and then we'll have some questions from y'all. So as Richard was saying earlier this week, yesterday, the Department of Health issued some proposed regulations to implement Amendment 2. Those proposed regulations are extremely strict and seem to me to be in many ways potentially violating the constitutional amendment that we voted 71% on. Some of those things that they're going to do and they're going to try to roll out, number one, is they're going to continue the 90-day wait period for doctors and patients, which I think is a travesty. There's not one other medication that we know of in the world that you have to wait 90 days in order to use a medication. You break your arm, you have cancer, they're not going to be like, we're going to wait 90 days till we put you on chemotherapy. That doesn't happen. And the intent of the amendment does not state that, and there's no limiting instruction from our perspective. Number two, the idea that these physicians have to take a special class and you have to be a special physician in order to be able to recommend cannabis. You know, this whole issue is between a doctor and a patient. This whole campaign was run about this issue should be between a doctor and a patient. And we're not going to allow or prevent our doctors, under the amendment, it specifically states any physician licensed in the state of Florida can do this. And so that's a second thing that we don't like. And again, talking about the doctor and patient relationship, what they did in that proposal is require or give the Board of Medicine the sort of duty to define what a debilitating medical condition is, similar to those enumerated. So they're basically saying that we're not going to allow a doctor and a patient to decide, because we know in medical states that there's probably over 50 different illnesses that cannabis is beneficial for. So to have an enumerated list is absolutely ridiculous. What about these rare diseases? What about these things that many people don't have, or issues and symptoms that they have that cannabis can help, but yet doesn't fit into one of these enumerated definitions? And you know what? Our doctors already do it every single day. They prescribe off-label medications, and this should be treated no differently. This should be a first option, not a last option for people. And we voted on this by 71%. The highest total ever in a state initiative for cannabis, and overwhelming message to our legislators what we're supposed to do and what we want here in the state of Florida. The next thing, they're trying to prevent the type of modality, the way that you get to use your medication. And that, again, is something that is contrary to the amendment. Instead of using the definition that the drafters of the amendment put in that amendment, they cite medical cannabis definition in the Right to Try Act. No, they have to follow, and they should be required to follow the amendment. So that amendment includes marijuana, all parts of that plant. MMTCs were intended to be processing places for edibles, for tinctures, for waxes, for things that people want to use and have that option. It should be between a doctor and a patient, and you're right, under a constitutional amendment, to be able to use the type of modality that we want. So those are major problems that we find on the patient-doctor relationship, or that I see, that are contrary to the amendment and contrary to what people in this state voted on. Next thing, from a business aspect of it, and it's a big question that I get regularly, and these people will push this movement, is vertical integration. They try to basically create these 7 nurseries as the same or equivalent to MMTCs. So under the current law, they're called dispensary organizations. Under Amendment 2, they're MMTCs, medical marijuana treatment centers. And so they're just basically trying to convert the dispensary organizations into the MMTCs without requiring any sort of application process, without requiring any sort of open market. It's another thing that we do believe is contrary to the amendment, will not provide reasonable access, and most importantly, won't provide reasonable prices for our patients. One of the biggest complaints that I'm getting around the state is affordability, not only of doctor visits because there's no regulations, but also of this medication. Cancer patients, people who don't have wealthy relatives or family without insurance aren't able to get and afford the medication that they're paying for. And that's a sad truth. This is a plant. And we have 7 people that are determining that, and an open market will change that issue. Vertical integration is another issue that we believe that the Department of Health is making an error on and shouldn't be allowed per the amendment. And basically that means, the whole dispensary, the nurseries own everything. So they own the processing, they own the products, they own the dispensing, they own the distribution. We believe under Amendment 2 that there should be a horizontal, meaning if you want to just cultivate, you can apply for a cultivation license. If you want to process, you can provide or apply for a processing license, a distribution license, a dispensary license separately as one, or you can apply for multiple. But it should be up to you to continue to create a fair market and stop this monopoly. The next thing, and really the thing that I think is the worst, what our legislature has allowed and what is happening with the Department of Health is our alleged independent labs. So under the low THC bill, it specifically calls for independent labs, no association with these nurseries and dispensaries, but the labs and the material that's tested, and it's my understanding the products that you're getting in this state aren't even coming with their testing certificates or anything. You're just getting the product and it's supposed to be whatever, they give you the strain or if it's indica or sativa or hybrid, but not the actual testing. But the testing is being done by the same nurseries that are producing and processing and distributing. So the amendment specifically, provides for, and the law currently under the low THC requires an independent testing lab. And that's something, again, in order to ensure products quality, to make sure that there's voids of pesticides. Basically what we're doing is saying, hey, we're trusting big business to do the right thing for us. And we've seen over the years that that doesn't work. The majority of lawsuits and safeguards that we have in this country are a result of big business deciding and making a cost-benefit analysis. It's going to cost me, and we'll use cannabis for example, $2,000 to destroy this crop and because it has powdery mildew or something, or we can fudge the numbers on it and send it out and hope nothing happens to anybody. We've seen it with Firestone, with tires. Really the original lawsuits for lighters and things started products liability in this country. And this is a medicine. This is about people's health and wellness. And so what I'm encouraging and hoping that people will do is take a positive messages to, number one, people in the legislature and make sure that they understand where you're coming from. And number two, if you're in areas where these hearings are, try to attend, try to show up and try to support, this robust, open, beneficial market for the patients with safe, affordable medications. It's something that we have to do. We have spoken loudly enough on our 71%, but we can't let that go to waste with allowing them to then trample us and say, we're going to do whatever we want. We have millions of dollars. You can't fight it. Well, there's people that will fight it if we have to. And I promise you that. It's why I became an attorney. I used to have a bumper sticker that said, stay in school, learn the system, then change it. And that's why I'm here today and doing what I do and believing in this medication. My mom passed away in 2003 of lung cancer. She wouldn't touch cannabis in any form. And you watch someone in a 6-month period, go from a strong, healthy woman to whittle away to nothing, but yet smoked a cigarette up until the day she died. And, this medicine I know would help her, but because of the lies of our government, because of the just say no days, she wouldn't touch it. And believe me, I tried. mind. And I lived in New Hampshire at the time, not in Florida. I've never done anything illegal in Florida. So, you know, but we'd like to, and we'd like to make it legal in Florida. So what I do now as well is regulate Florida, and it's something near and dear to my heart. You know, as he was saying, a big part of what I've done in my career is criminal defense and representing patients and people across this state from really having their lives ruined from a plant. And I'm sick of it. This country is sick of it, I think. You know, we went from 4 medical states to 8 this year, with it passing in 4 other states. We had an additional 4 states pass with medical. And we're going to continue this trend in the state of Florida with Regulate Florida. So Regulate Florida is something hopefully that they won't be able to do under Amendment 2. It is a longer petition. It is 4 pages because we don't trust our legislature to do the right thing in a big part. We believe that we need to have more rules and regulations, and we believe that if you vote on amendment or on Regulate Florida over 60%, then counties and cities and towns shouldn't have the ability to say 6 people on a board, we're going to ban it. We don't care what you say. So some of the safeguards we have in Regulate Florida, number 1, is allowing cultivation. So you start growing your tomatoes now, learn how to use this system so that you can grow it perfectly. And by the time Regulate Florida passes, you can put your cannabis seeds and start growing your own medicine. Because I think for a lot of people, this is medicine no matter what. It's a wellness drug, you know, and cultivation of it, just like cultivation of any plant, is sort of very therapeutic. It's very calming on the nerves and the soul, and I think it's good for our health and our prosperity. And then to be able to grow your own plant, whether or not you're going to use it as a medicine, as a food, or recreational, it really doesn't matter. And recreational, I mean, to most people is relaxation, you know, and I think so many people die of stress and heart issues these days. Relaxation is about as medical as we can get. You know, the worst side effect is euphoria, right? So Regulate Florida, you know, allows for cultivation, 6 mature flowering plants per 21 or older in the household, in a locked closet or locked greenhouse outside. We didn't put a limit on any sort of vegetative plants, and we did that specifically for juicing issues. Over the years, I've had many people with HIV, AIDS, or autoimmune type of issues, and many of them juice the raw plant, the leaves. I had one client here in Hillsborough County, he had like 56 plants, and he wouldn't even let them bud, half of them. He would just pluck all the leaves off it and juice it every morning. He'd use a little bit to smoke to keep his pills down in the morning so that he could eat from the nausea. But so we believe in that, and we believe eventually that people will learn that this is a healthy wellness drug. It regulates our entire body. I'm familiar with many doctors in the country that believe that, you know, this is our endocannabinoid deficiencies and problems that we have today is because that we haven't had this in our body and in our systems for so long. Up until about 1937, it was in everything that people were using on a regular and consistent basis. And then there's a huge, obviously, missing element of it. And now today, you know, we're seeing in our patients a less Alzheimer's, you know, reduction or the stopping of the effect. And we're obviously seeing treatment of cancer, epilepsy, and dozens of other diseases. So in Regulate Florida, you're allowed to be able to process, to be able to use it in any manner, shape, and form. You're allowed to transfer up to 1 ounce or less to people, so you can give it away for no money. You can carry a reasonable amount. And some of the things that we thought were very important is, number 1 is employee rights. So as an employee, you know, if you're smoking a joint on the weekend, you shouldn't get punished. And this is why the drug companies are so much against this issue at this point in time. If you use cocaine on a Friday night and you go to work on Tuesday, you're probably going to test negative, regardless, because the shelf life in your body is a certain period of time, whereas cannabis is 30 days. So these drug companies know, and same thing with alcohol. You can be a raging alcoholic all weekend and go to work on Monday. In all likelihood, you're not going to test positive. So it doesn't matter to these people. But cannabis is one of those things that continues to stay in your blood and allows these employees and employers to then potentially take action against people. And this is happening currently in medical states right now. There was a paraplegic in Colorado sued Dish Network, and, you know, he lost. They had to pay him, you know, unemployment employment, and there's workers' comp cases where they'd have to pay workers' comp, but they're still allowed to fire you. And that shouldn't happen. You know, you can drink, you can do opiates all week, and they can't ask you if it doesn't affect your employment. So Regulate Florida specifically kind of sets out an exception and states that they can only really restrict you on work time. So that this shouldn't be an issue that's happening in states across the country. Number two, we have a provision and we take it out of the gun laws. So we allow people, and the intent of the amendment is to allow people, if they want to have a firearm, which is your Second Amendment right, then you can do so if you're a regular cannabis user under Regulate Florida. As far as I know, it's one of the only petitions in the country that allows that and permits that, but we thought, you know, we did this reflective, so we watched what was going on around the country and we decided that we want to make changes and try to be proactive, whereas other states are, number one, going through these states and having problems with it, or number two, like Colorado did, and this is a public use issue, is they just passed public use for the city of Denver this year. We allow private establishments, such as if the Red Star Rock Bar said they wanted to have cannabis smoking out here and they allowed it, you could do it. And we believe that that's important, and we believe that, you know, if we are really going to truly regulate marijuana like alcohol, we have to allow those things. I think it would be beneficial to the bars, to the economy, to the roads, to everything. So there was a new study that just came out recently from a doctor regarding the safety and dangerousness of driving under the use of cannabis versus non. And he basically said, and he did a meta-analysis of a bunch of different studies, he said it's basically like the risk factor changes from driving at night to driving in the day. So, you know, the statistics show that this is a safe and effective plant for people to use responsibly. We are, and not against alcohol at all. I drink all the time, and we trust people, mature, responsible adults, to use alcohol and be responsible and take care of each other and be safe on the roadways with it. You know, every alcohol commercial now talks about it. So we should be able to do that with cannabis, and that's what we believe Regulate Florida will do for the states of Florida. We believe that it will, number one, obviously boom the economy. Leafly just came out with an article that there was 123,000 jobs created in medical states in 2016 for the medical cannabis industry, and we are a state of 20 million people. We have over 100 million tourists a year coming to this state, and if we just compare that to Colorado, they made about approximately $1.3 billion this year. They have about 5 million people in the state of Colorado. They went from 20 million to 80 million tourists since they've legalized cannabis in the state. And we obviously have 4 times that amount. They created about 10,000 jobs. We could create at least 30,000. This is something that is smart, sensible policy. That's why we're doing this. We believe the time is now for us to continue to be active, both in the medical arena and on the regulated adult use arena. Prisons and jails cost too much. Our law enforcement should be focused on stopping these people shooting everybody everywhere and worry about those things rather than people with a plant. Okay, your laws right now in the state of Florida, it's more strict for you to be walking down the street and have cannabis in your pocket. You could have a longer license suspension than you can with a DUI. If that's not illogical and doesn't make any sense, I don't know what is. And we have to send a message because we know our legislators won't do it. We did it with Amendment 2, and we have to do it with Regulate Florida. So thank you, everyone, for signing the petition. You know, you can go to regulateflorida.com. We're going to be involved in a bunch of events and things like that coming around the state. And I hope everyone can, number one, get educated, because knowledge is power. It is the way to understanding. It is the way to be able to influence and educate people who are against it as to, you know, why we really need it. Why realistically they're just wasting our money. They're supporting the prison industry. They're supporting the pharmaceutical industry. They're supporting basically industry that doesn't care about you and your health. And we need to change that. We need profits over prisons. And I'm open for questions. Anyone? Or I think I have some.